Back on Titans Talk, we are rehashing the Titans' season opening loss to the Raiders, 26-16 yesterday at Nissan Stadium. Phone lines remain open, 737-7767 is the number. Tony's been kind enough to wait through the break. Tony, we appreciate that. You're next up here on Titans Talk.
Thank you for taking the call. A couple of things I want to say about the Titans. I had a lot of hope in them, still do, but I think the news media, the owners, sports announcers have gotten too soft on them. Because if you're in a ball team that they want this city to be, you will rip them up because you're paying these guys all these millions of dollars. And soft on defense, I told you the first of the year, they're going to need defense. Or these offensive teams hyped up is going to blow them out. And sure enough, it happened. The Titans need defense. They got ran all over.
Well, they didn't get run all over. They gave up 100 yards rushing yesterday, which is not exactly getting killed on the ground. And they did it to one of the best running backs in football and one of the most explosive offenses in football, which scored 26 points. And they needed 4 field goals, 2 of longer than 50 yards to do it. One of the touchdowns they scored was on a short field after the botched onside kick. I mean, look, you can criticize things yesterday. They failed to make some plays that you have to make if you're going to beat a team as good as the Raiders. But let's not forget, this was a Raiders team that was going to win the AFC West last year until David Carr went down. They still get into the playoffs as a wild card, even without their star quarterback. This is a really good football team that came in here yesterday, and the Titans played right with them. The Raiders made the plays to win yesterday, but if they played again this weekend, there's no telling that you wouldn't have a very competitive game again. And if the Titans made the plays, they couldn't win. That's the type of game this was. This was not a game where you look at it and say, the Titans have no chance this year.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, these are power-to-puff guys on the field. They could have played better than that at home.
All right. I mean, look, I don't know how you call them powder puff guys. That's not at all the MO of this team, and certainly wasn't how they played last year. Now, were they disappointed in some of those aspects? We talked about the run game. We talked about stopping the run before the break. Absolutely. But powder puff is not a word or a phrase that anyone around the National Football League is going to use to describe this Titans team. They are physical, and they're going to hit you. They're going to come after you. Yesterday, they got beat. Got beat probably by a better team, at least a better team in week 1 of this season. But look, there's 15 weeks to go. This is still a young team and a lot left on the table. Let's go to Ken. Ken, good evening.
Hello, Steve.
Hey there, Ken.
Listen, I'm going to use a Charles Barkley phrase.
Okay.
Horrible.
All right. Why were they terrible in your mind?
Horrible. And one of the things that I have never understood, and all coaches preach this, and that is the block in the back. A guy returns the ball for 90 yards, and they call it back for a block in the back. They always preach, if you see a guy's numbers, don't touch him. And that's just preached hard and fast. Sure. And I don't understand players. They keep, and probably half the time, it's not even in the area that it would prevent anything. Right. It just blows my mind when I see those kind of calls made. But all this stuff that started in the beginning of the season, I think, is going to be their tailspin to destiny. And that is the coach that allows them to start talking about winning championships and winning the division and winning the South and all that. All your great coaches will not allow that. And that's just my firm belief. That's all I got. I'm going to listen to you.
All right. Thanks, Ken. Look, I appreciate that. And I do think there's a thing about this team in particular, because everyone has gotten on board and talked about them. It's really weird. There's kind of this hype around a team that hasn't been to the playoffs since 2008. People believe they're a legit threat in the AFC because of the roster that's been built. And that's a credit to the great strides they took last year. It's a credit to John Robinson and the roster he's built. But look, they haven't done anything yet. From my experience in the locker room talking to them, I think they get that. Heck, Delaney Walker said today to a question that I asked, I said, hey, Delaney, so much excitement, so much expectations around this team coming in. Does that make yesterday harder? And he said, look, all you people had the expectations and were talking about us. We knew we had to go to work, and we still know we have to go to work. And so if all of you want to hate on us now and think we're not as good or we don't deserve any credit or anything like that, fine by us, because we'll probably play better if that's the case. So I think within the locker room, they understand the work they have to put in and the job in front of them. But I also think, to your points about talking about this, that's weird for this team. I mean, it's a different burden for them. But I think it's okay to embrace that too. Embrace the expectation, because a year ago they were 9-7. They were a winning football team. But what kept them out of the playoffs was the fact they didn't win the division. What prevented them from winning the division? The fact that they didn't win enough games in the division. They went just 2-4 against the division teams. So what they've spent this offseason and training camp in the preseason talking about was going down and taking care of business against a team like Jacksonville this weekend, against the Texans, against the Colts. Winning those games is what's going to get this team over the hump. And I'll say this again. I said this last week. If you're going to go 1-1 in the first 2 weeks, which was always a likelihood when you're playing a really good team like the Raiders and a road game against a division opponent, the way you want to go is go win in Jacksonville. Beat the divisional opponent to go 1-1. So if they come back with a win on Sunday, these are pretty successful first 2 games for this team. And I think it's okay to have that mindset and understand just how important all these division games are. I get your point about talking too much about the expectations, talking too much about a division title or a Super Bowl before you even play week 1. But I think there's a lot of teams around the league that have similar discussions about that. I mean, that's what you play for ultimately. And they understand, they're pros, they get that you can't get there in week 1 and you can't get there in the preseason. It's a process that you have to earn. But I think it's okay to have that on the bulletin board or have that on the wall and reach out and try and touch it. Back to the phones we go. Let's go to Jeff. Jeff, good evening. You're next up here on Titans Talk.
All right, I appreciate you taking my call.
You bet.
Hey, I just wanted to say I'm probably as disappointed as any fan that we didn't win the game yesterday, but I firmly believe that this is a great football team, and I don't understand why everybody's kind of ragging on the Titans right now. That was 2 great football teams that went at each other, and any given Sunday, like you were saying a while ago, they play this game over, the Titans win. I think the big thing yesterday was 3rd down conversions for us. I think we had, 3 possessions in the first half?
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
And, like I say, it was just a good team that they played yesterday. And had we had maybe made a couple more 3rd down conversions and kept drives alive and scored 7 in the red zone, which they normally do, I think it's a total different outcome. But I also agree with you that the biggest thing the Titans need to do right now is win this division, and I think that's the main goal that everybody in Tennessee should be looking at, is winning this division.
Absolutely.
Getting good at the end of the year and being there at the end of the year, win this division, and then, worry about the playoffs during the playoffs and the Super Bowl if that comes.
If you win the division, you get a home game in the playoffs, and that would be absolutely a huge step for the Titans. It gives you an opportunity to win a game on your home field and then see where it goes. Every team in the playoffs is obviously good and has a chance, so we'll see if they can do that. Jeff, I appreciate the call. I think you brought up some good points there. 3rd down conversions. They started the game hot yesterday. Marcus Mariota came out and was very efficient on 3rd down, 3 of 3 on the opening drive, hit his first 5 in the first half. You can't ask for anything more from your quarterback than that. But what that illustrated is that they struggled to stay ahead of the chains. They were in 3rd and long a lot yesterday, and in the second half it caught up with them, where they failed to make some of those plays. Eric Decker slipped on a route. Mariota missed a pass when he was on the run, where he had Rashard Matthews open for a brief moment. They just didn't get it done in the second half. I think it was 2 of 8 or 2 of 7 in the second half on 3rd down conversions, where they could extend drives or potentially turn a field goal drive into a touchdown. They were unable to get that done. That was a big moment. And the other thing was the red zone. Last year, this was the best team in the NFL at scoring touchdowns when they get in the red zone. Yesterday, they had 3 trips to the red zone, and they only got 1 touchdown. Meanwhile, the Raiders had 3 trips themselves. They got 2. That's a huge, huge swing in this game. I imagine, because the track record's there for Mariota and this offense, that they're going to be better than that week in and week out throughout the course of the season. But yesterday, that is what really hurt them against this Raiders team. Back to the phones now. Let's go to Dan. Dan, good evening. Thanks for waiting.
Thanks, Steve. I've got a few comments here. If you'll just allow me, I won't be long. To start with, I just loved the onside kick. Just absolutely loved it. And if you go back and look at the tape, we should have gotten that ball. There was 3 Titans there on it. One opposing player there, and we did everything except go for the ball.
Yep.
When he first kicked it, I thought, man, we got this, But I know there's a lot of people that just are really crucifying Malarkey for going for that. But if it had worked, it would have been the greatest thing all season. But like I say, if you would look back at that tape, there's 3 Titans there that none of the 3 went for the ball. Next is on that drive after the onside kick failed, the tackling was just so poor, and it was throughout the whole game. I think that's something that really has to be addressed, and it's not just the Titans. I see this throughout the league year after year now. Tackling has just gotten to be a lost art. I don't know whether they're not coaching it correctly, from high school, college, and on after the NFL, but tackling has just gotten to be ridiculous. And, of course, the pass defense didn't seem much improved after this first game, but hopefully they'll improve as the season goes along. One other gripe I had was the clock management at the end of the first half. Mm-hmm. Players that caught the ball and running out of bounds, when we had plenty of time. And if I'm not mistaken, we went inside halftime with 3 timeouts remaining. So I just wish that we could have, run some more clock out. And then after we had to settle for the field goal, we didn't kick it out of the end zone, and so that allowed them. I wish he had told him, allowed him to just kick it away. But anyway, this is just one game, and I really have a lot of confidence in the Titans this year. We played an awfully good team yesterday, and so I'm still looking forward to this season. All
right, Dan, appreciate the call. Good stuff there. I agree. At the end of the half there, my biggest thing, because here's the thing about the clock management of the actual drive. You can nitpick some of the things about a guy going in or out of bounds or whatever, but at that point, they're just treating it as a possession. They want to score, and they want to score a touchdown. And so I think they were doing everything in their power to have the most out of their own possession. Now, at the end of the day, when you only got a field goal, would you have liked to have left less time? Yes. But the biggest gripe I have about how that played out was the kickoff going to a guy who is dangerous returner in Cordell Patterson. Because if you kick that deep and you put him at the 25-yard line, I'm not sure they have enough time to drive and put themselves in position. It's certainly much more difficult. You give up a big return like they did, and now you only have to go 20 yards or so to give yourself a chance at a field goal. I think that was where the real mistake was before the half. Not so much the clock management, but in terms of the management of that kickoff. Another thing to complain about in the special teams yesterday. Remember with the pass defense, who they were playing. That is a really, really good pass offense yesterday. Was the Titans secondary great? No, absolutely not. They couldn't get turnovers. They certainly gave up their fair share of conversions and yards. But first start for Adoree Jackson, I thought he looked pretty good. Way better than he looked in the preseason. Logan Ryan, I think, is a solid pickup for this team. Look, they're not going to go from one of the worst pass secondaries in the league to one of the best overnight. But I think this pass defense has a chance to be significantly better than where it was a year ago, based off of even what we saw yesterday against a really, really good Raiders passing attack. Tackling, I agree with you, and it isn't just a Titans problem. It's a league-wide problem. Remember now, in the new collective bargaining agreement, which isn't all that new anymore, 6-7 years old, these guys aren't in pads very much. And so it's difficult to get them to really hit guys and wrap up and do all that. I think what you saw yesterday was a team that really hadn't done a whole lot of tackling for a full game scenario since the end of last season. And I think you saw that not just with the Titans, but with a lot of teams around the NFL. I suspect that will get better now that you're in meaningful games. But yeah, that was a problem yesterday. And the onside kick, I go back and forth. I love the aggressiveness. I love sitting out there with your team. And you're right, if he succeeds, then it should have, because they had guys there. If Ty Smith does his job and takes out the one Raiders guy there, they've got no one to get the ball, and Denoris Searcy literally picks the ball up off the ground because no one is around. But Smith didn't do his job, and the Raiders guy was able to make a play. If you get it, Mike Mularkey's a genius, and he steals the possession at the beginning of the season, and he gets lauded today. But that's not what happened. And that's where the downside of that play is no matter how good the play is, no matter how fired up your guys are to run it, you better be sure you execute. Because if you don't, you give the Raiders the ball at midfield, you give them a spark at the beginning of the game, and the Titans played from behind basically the entire game because of that call. It doesn't mean it was a bad call by the coaches necessarily, but it certainly opens the call up for second guessing the next day, because it changed the complexion of the game right from the very first kickoff. That wasn't the intention, obviously, but that is what the bottom line was yesterday. So ultimately, it's a bad call because it hurt them yesterday because the execution wasn't there. All right, we got to take a break. Phone lines are still open, 737-7767. We'll continue on with this game. Stay tuned. You're watching Titans Talk here on News Channel 5+.